the person asking those questions learns right alongside the person on the receiving end of those questions. So it's really we call it, interdevelopmental, that you as the coach leader are really learning and growing right alongside the person you're coaching. And that to me is just awesome.
You're listening to the Profit by Design podcast, episode 49. You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire.
Is your business running your life? Are you fed up with working crazy long hours only to lay awake at night worrying about cash flow or feeling totally angry and frustrated over what your team isn't getting done? If so, listen up. I've got something I want to share with you. At Tap the Potential, we have our small group coaching program that is designed for business owners just like yourself who are done. You're done with the way things are going and you're ready for a change, and not just any little Band-Aid change. You want a life-changing business transformation. That's what we specialize in at Tap the Potential. We turn life and cash-sucking small businesses into highly profitable, great places to work. And then we send those business owners on a 4-week vacation while the business runs without them. If that sounds good to you, I invite you to check out our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential, where we integrate Profit First, the Pumpkin Plan, and my book, How to Hire the Best, into our small groups to produce these transformations. All the while, we're working with you to be the leader you need to be to create this business that can run on its own while you have more life. Check us out, tapthepotential.com. Profit designers, today's episode is a special one for me. I'm bringing you a conversation with Lisa Kramer. Lisa was my very first coach, and I hold her in such high regard. I have learned so much from her throughout the years. We've had the opportunity to work together in various capacities, and most recently, she has come on board at Tap the Potential to facilitate our Leadership Mastermind. I consider Lisa to be a master of creating coaching cultures in businesses, and that's what she's supporting in her role, facilitating the Leadership Mastermind. We have our business owners and their leaders who have taken our coach approach at Tap the Potential and who are really intent on using the skills, the coaching skills that they've learned in Coach Approach to spread the coaching skills throughout the organization and really create strong coaching cultures in their businesses. Lisa Kramer is the founder and president of Leading with Intention. Since transitioning to full-time coaching in 2002, Lisa has successfully coached business leaders and managers, and she has served as a mentor coach and coach trainer for hundreds of coaches worldwide. Lisa is an intuitive listener who combines gentle directness with powerful questions that generate new insight and growth. Her passion for coaching emerged from a successful career in clinical social work and social work education. Lisa is currently on the faculty of the University of Texas at Dallas Master's Program in Organizational Behavior and Executive Coaching, where she teaches, supervises, and assesses both internal and external coaches. She also serves as a leadership coach for MBA students at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Lisa received her master's degree in social work from the University of Pennsylvania and her coaching certification from the Coaches Training Institute. She is also a certified yoga instructor, an avid cyclist, and she loves all kinds of dancing. Hey, Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sabrina. It's great to be here.
This is going to be fun. So, a little background. You and I have worked together off and on in different ways. I'm thinking it's been about 16 years now.
I think you're right. It's
Time
hard
flies.
to remember. Yeah.
So Lisa was my instructor when I went through coach training school at the Institute of Life Coach Training. She was in the very first class that I took. She was a co-instructor. And I ended up hiring Lisa as a mentor coach after that class. I don't know that I've ever shared this with you, Lisa, but the reason I hired you for my mentor coach is, one, I knew I needed a lot of help. I knew nothing about running a business. But what had impressed me when you were teaching our life coach training class is every time there was a situation, like when we would role play or we would talk about how to coach a situation, and my mind would go blank and I would think, I have no idea what to say here. I can't find the words. You would come up with something that was just so spot on. And I thought, oh my goodness, Lisa has a way of thinking that I want to learn. I don't know where she's coming from with this way of thinking, but it works, it's effective, and I want to learn that. And that's why I hired you to be my mentor coach.
Wow, I never did know that. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, and now here I am 16 years later, have a little wisdom behind me, and I can point to that and say that part of it is your free spirit personality. You're an out-of-the-box thinker. You see things differently. I'm a very leader task, like A comes to B and B goes to C. So somebody who can think a little differently than me is always good to have around. And it's also that combined with coaching skills and powerful questioning and that mindset of curiosity. You really embody that. That has become a way of life for you. I imagine it wasn't always that way for you. You weren't a coach. How did you come into coaching?
So it's interesting to hear you say that because my background is actually in clinical social work and social work education. So I have a master's in social work. And as you know, I've reinvented myself a few times and decided to go for coach training in the late 90s when coaching was first starting to gain some popularity. And what I found when I went through my certification with the Coaches Training Institute was it felt like I was home. Like I really felt like coaching was my thing. And I loved my work as a social worker and a social work educator, but I was ready for a change. And coaching just felt very aligned with who I was and who I am.
Yeah, I can see that. And so the other thing that I want to share with our profit designers is currently you are facilitating the Leadership Mastermind groups at Tap the Potential. And the Leadership Mastermind groups are for our clients who are business owners and the leaders on their team who have been through our Coach Approach program and who are dedicated to creating a coaching culture in the business. So behind all that, there's some things that I think our profit designers should know. Number one, you created the Coach Approach program way back when, and you delivered it at Wharton. And I got to be a part of, after you had created it with a couple of other coaches, I got to come in and you and I worked together and started honing it a little bit when you brought it live to Riverton and some of my clients, and we made some adjustments. And then I picked it up again a few years later when some of my clients said, hey, that coach approach you used to teach, that was really powerful. Why aren't you teaching that anymore? And so I started adjusting it for small business. And then we offered it at Tap the Potential. And now that it has taken off, it's really been tremendous, I think, for me to bring you back in to be able to work with our business owners and their team members as they're applying the coach approach. So maybe one place to start is let's just define what is a coach approach and a coaching culture in a business.
Yeah, it's a great question because one of the distinctions that I make when I'm teaching the coach approach is I am not teaching people to become professional coaches. They're not learning to do what you and I do, for a living. And what the coach approach is all about is it's helping leaders at all levels of an organization learn to listen better, learn to ask really good questions, to help people take greater personal responsibility for making decisions and really for their careers. At the end of the day, it's about helping each person think about what's going to make me thrive in the workplace. Because as we know, just because someone's in a leadership role, they're not mind readers and they don't know what each of their team members really needs in order to thrive. And coaching opens up that kind of a dialogue where an individual can really start to manage their career and their success by clarifying for themselves what they really need to be successful and letting their leader know that.
And that doesn't just happen like turning a switch in a business. If we say, okay, now we're going to start coaching here, there's a transition that happens. And that's really what we're working with our clients through, is that transition of once you learn how to use coaching skills and how to engage in coaching conversations, how do you then start applying it to create that coaching culture? In your experience, I know you've worked like myself, and we've worked in different settings, and I've worked in some really great places to work, and I've worked in some awful places to work. What's your experience of the difference between a coaching culture and a typical business environment?
The coaching culture, which, by the way, it's not necessarily easy to create that coaching culture. There has to be buy-in across the board, and especially among the leaders of the organization, the owners, if it's a small business, the leadership team. Those individuals really have to believe in the power of coaching and experience it themselves in order for it to be successful, in my experience. And what happens in a coaching culture is people are genuinely empowered. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but they really are empowered to take responsibility, to give feedback at any level. So someone who may not even have direct reports, or it may be a company where there aren't direct reports, that person could be actually coaching up to their manager. That person could be giving their manager some feedback. It's like regardless of reporting structure, people are having coaching conversations across the board. And there's never fear that if I speak up, my job might be on the line because I'm saying something that might offend this person. They really learn how to have that courage to speak up and to do it in a way that, the other person can hear it. So that's really the power of the coaching culture, that kind of open, honest communication, regardless of reporting structure.
And I also think a piece of that, at least in my experience, is the learning. The desire for learning and improvement, and the feedback is given in that context. The feedback is not around, you're a bad person, you did this wrong, you're going to be fired. It is, let's look at this. This didn't work. What can we learn from it? And, asking to share observations with someone versus putting a judgment on, you are bad, or something that you've done is bad, or you don't care about your work and it shows, and it's all the judgmental that is stripped away in a coaching conversation. And it is around, let's look at what's happened here. How can we learn from it? And can I share some of my observations with you, maybe about the impact of what happened here?
Yes. And in addition to that, so feedback is really seen as, I'm supporting you to be successful here. And the way that I support you in your success is by sharing these observations. It's a judgment-free zone. It's a shame-free zone. It's not about being punitive. It really is a gift. We talk about feedback as a gift, and it is. And then when you add to that the coach approach, it's, okay, so now that we're talking about what this behavior is and the observations. Let's collaborate on the solutions to address it. So then it's not up to the manager to say, here's what I need you to do to fix this. It's not about that at all. It's really, let's really put our heads and hearts together here and come up with the solution that is going to be the best one for you, because my solution for you may not work for you. I really want to hear what you can do to address this.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't a natural shift. Like you said, this is not easy to make this happen. And I find that one of the tools that we teach is the choice map. And we'll link to that in the show notes from the podcast. The choice map really illustrates how quickly our non-conscious questions send us into the judger pit. So an event happens and all these questions start going around. Whose fault is it? And what's wrong with them? Why are they so stupid? Why am I so stupid? Will this ever work? And all those questions take us straight into the judger pit. We shift our questions in our head first, not even what comes out of our mouth, but just the questions in our head. And we go down the learner path instead of, I wonder what happened here. I wonder why this problem occurred. I wonder, maybe we have a system that needs to be addressed, or there's a procedure that's not in place. And getting curious and asking for the other person's feedback, that's a learner path, and it creates an opportunity for win-win solutions, just like you described, that feeling of we're going to collaborate and let's look at what's going to be most effective here. Not what's right or wrong, but what's going to be most effective.
Yes. And in that kind of a discussion, the person asking those questions learns right alongside the person on the receiving end of those questions. So it's really we call it, interdevelopmental, that you as the coach leader are really learning and growing right alongside the person you're coaching. And that to me is just awesome.
That's one of my favorite things about being a coach, learning and growing constantly.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, what do I do if someone is not coachable? Can I make them coachable? What's your answer to that, Lisa?
So this question comes up a lot when I do the coach approach training in organizations. And my first response is always, everyone is coachable until proven otherwise. So to go into each situation with this mindset that everybody is coachable until proven otherwise. Now, what happens sometimes is, number one, someone who's a little bit skeptical at first about coaching starts to get a feel for what this thing called coaching is all about, and they start to engage. So they may, allow for that skeptic and meet them where they are and give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to kind of get with the program once they really understand it. There are also people who will start to learn about coaching and, their hands will be crossed, their arms will be crossed, and it's like, no, not for me. And that may be somebody who maybe there's a performance management issue, or there's something else that really needs to be looked at. And finally, there are times when it could be about the coach leader, not necessarily about the person, that there's something that they get, that triggers them or they get hooked by, and then they have to look at themselves and their own emotional reaction. What's really getting in the way here of me coaching this person? Because they do seem like they're coachable, but I'm having trouble with them. And I always recommend that they seek out, a trusted advisor or their own coach, if they have one, to talk it through and understand what really is getting in my way here.
I think that's such an important point, because no matter how good we are as coaches, or how, we've got all the skills and we've practiced the skills, we have our own triggers and we have our own blind spots. And if we're not seeking outside feedback, we can really get hooked very quickly and the situation can deteriorate. So there's so much value, I think, even in coaches, having coaches, but also having those trusted individuals in an organization that you can turn to and ask for their feedback. And I want to make a clear distinction about gossiping and triangulating versus really going and just saying, I'm struggling here and I need some outside feedback. So one of the things that can happen is we have somebody that we're trying to coach and it's not going well, and we get frustrated and we go blow off steam to a coworker or a colleague and say, oh my gosh, so-and-so is frustrating me, blah, blah, blah. And it's just this downward spiral. That's not a productive conversation. We are blowing off steam, so we feel better when we leave that conversation, but nothing productive happens as a result. And the situation continues. And in fact, now there's another person who has, negative thoughts and negative beliefs about this other person in the organization. So that can actually start kind of this ganging up phenomenon. When you're going to someone to get supportive feedback or coaching feedback, it is about, I'm struggling here. Maybe there's some blowing off steam, but then the other person needs to be able to shift the conversation and say, well, let's look at what are the options? What might you want here?
Yeah. And I think it's always helpful if the person who is the confidant in that moment has those skills to not get into gossip, but to say, okay, I understand you're having an issue or some current concerns about so-and-so, but let's really focus on you. Let's talk about you and what is going on for you here, because this is really about you having greater self-awareness and understanding yourself so that you can go back to this person in a more effective way. And not everybody's able to do that. But again, I think going back to your question about the coaching culture, as more and more people learn how to really use coaching, then they're clearer about what's the difference between a gossip conversation and a conversation to help that person get clear about what's going to help them move forward.
And as you say that, one of the phrases that comes from the book, The Coaching Habit, which we use in our coach approach, is don't coach the ghost. And I hear our clients and their team members saying that a lot, like, oh yeah, I was trying to coach the ghost. Can't do that. You can only coach the person who is there in front of you, not the people who are outside the room.
Yes, I think that's important. And I also talk about coach the person, not the problem, so that they're not getting into trying to problem solve about the problem so much, but again, focusing on the person who's coming for, needing something themselves.
Mm-hmm. In one of the interesting conversations, I got to substitute in Leadership Mastermind. So you've been facilitating, but you were out for a week and I got to sit in and substitute, which was really fun. One of the conversations that came up that I think is very important for us to be mindful around is how easy it can be for us as the listener when someone is coming to us for coaching to get into problem solving for them. And to start seeing them, if someone is crying or upset or in an emotional state, it's very easy to think, I need to take care of them and swoop in and fix this. And I think a lot of the stress that business owners and leaders feel is taking on problems that are not theirs to solve. And it's so easy to get drawn into that. And one of the things that I learned from you early on that's been so helpful around that is to remember that each person is whole, competent, capable, and complete. So even when they're in front of you and they're having a meltdown, they're still whole, competent, capable, and complete in the midst of that meltdown. Maybe not in that moment. Maybe they need, their amygdala has hijacked the situation, but they will eventually be able to settle down. And that's where the coaching questions can be so powerful in helping them to get back to coming up with their own solutions.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because it also makes me think about the importance of the listener having that, I call it like compassionate detachment, so you can still like have empathy and show caring to this person, but it doesn't mean that you have to fix it for them. And there is a difference, things like saying like, I really understand, and that must be really hard for you. It lets the person know you're there and you're listening, but you're not saying, let me take this on and fix this for you. And it also ties back to that question you asked about, is everybody coachable? Because there are some situations, and we talk about this in the coach approach, where maybe in that moment, coaching really isn't the most appropriate approach. Maybe that person really does need support and just wants you to listen. And it's not like, let's talk about what your options are. It's just, I'm here for you. I'm listening. What do you need? And the coaching conversation might happen another time.
Yeah. And the timing of coaching conversations is very important. It's
Yes.
In small business, it can seem like there's a lot of crises and fires that we're running around to put out. And so do I coach in that moment when someone is asking for help, or do I just tell them what to do? And there's a time and place for coaching, and picking that time and place is important.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Lisa, one of the other things that I wanted us to get into, and we kind of alluded to it already in the conversation, is the importance of coaches having coaches, but also in terms of our own professional development as entrepreneurs. There are some things that I've seen you do, that I do myself, that don't get talked about a lot, but I think are very important for how we take care of ourselves and how we continue to learn and grow. And one of those things that you've done for years is you have a very small group of women that you go on retreat with. Can you share some about that?
Yeah. So it's even more than the retreats. We actually started meeting monthly. Now, we happen to be in the same geographic area, but I don't think that should be a determining factor. You could, today with Zoom and there's so much technology, you could certainly meet with people virtually. But we happen to be we are all in the Philadelphia area, and we would get together once a month. We would block out like about a half a day. And over the course of that half a day, we each got to be the focus of attention for about, 45 minutes to an hour. We actually had a form that we would complete in preparation for the meeting, but we would talk about, these are some of my challenges that I'm facing right now. These are some of my wins that I want to celebrate with you. And we would be there for each other as those trusted advisors, coaches if needed, consultants if needed. Like, we would wear many different hats. But I truly believe that I would not have been as successful as I am in my business if it wasn't for the support of those two women. And I think they would say the same if they were here about their businesses, because there's something about really knowing that you've got these other people who want for you what you want for yourself, as much as you do. Like, they are 100% supportive of me and my success, and I'm the same with them. And so recently, which I had shared with you, we went on this amazing retreat to a place that was a combination like spa, hotel, conference center. And we had an opportunity to take like amazing classes together, yoga and different kinds of things. And we used our meals to really focus on business. And so we have fun together in addition to it's work, but it's also play and fun. And I cannot say enough about that for the listeners who are maybe just getting started or finding themselves in a place where maybe they're at a crossroads, but finding even just 2 other people, 3 other people, 1 other person even that you could work with consistently, it will make a difference.
Yes. And I want to underscore that like 1,000 times, because when we are business owners, a lot of times we feel like we are isolated. No one else gets it. No one knows what I'm going through. And no one wants to hear everything that we're going through. Mm-hmm. And so having some other business owners who get it. Mm-hmm. And the other piece is the commitment and the investment and you and them. That makes that so powerful, and the ongoing opportunities to connect. So it's not a one-time event and you guys come together and then you scatter and you never see each other. It's ongoing. You guys, how many years have you been doing this?
We actually started, one of the women and I started in 2003, and then the other one joined us in 2006. So it's been many years at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And So you have the support of other women entrepreneurs who have seen your business and you grow and evolve over time. And for myself, my colleague Donna Lyons and I think you've met Donna. We were at a conference and we ran into you at Starbucks, of all places. Imagine. We got into a conversation. Donna and I travel together a lot. And so whenever we are together, we do a lot of work on our businesses, and we bounce things off of each other and share ideas, talk about our challenges and problems. And one of our favorite things to do is to get on the train. And she lives in New Jersey, so we'll go into New York for the day. Or the best ideas come on the train for some reason. It's about just being out of our normal environment, I think, and free of the distractions. And I think that's another piece of the retreats, like what you're talking about, is you're getting out of your office, you're getting away from things, and that shifts the perspective.
Yeah, I think really making a commitment to, we're not going to be on email, we're not going to be looking at our phones, we're really here with each other, enjoying each other's company, focusing on, work stuff, but also, having fun. I agree that change of environment is important.
Yeah. So as you are on retreat with your friends, and how do you guys coach each other?
We ask what's needed, like in the moment. Like, let's say I was to bring something up, like I'm trying to decide, this actually just happened. I got an opportunity for October, and it was going to be a pretty big time commitment and also a pretty significant amount of money that I was going to be paid. And something inside of me was just like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say yes to this, but how could I turn down that money? And, just to bring that up, and then one of them will say, okay, so do you want coaching on this? Do you want me to just tell you based on what I know about you, what I think you should do? And so sometimes we go that route, like, just, yeah, you know me really well. Just tell me what you think. Or, yeah, I would like some time to have you coach me on this so I can kind of think and talk out loud about it. So we really ask each other what each other needs, depending upon whatever the issue or topic is.
Out of all the people I know, I think you are one of the ones who is very in tune to intuition, and you're the first to recognize in your body when something doesn't feel right. How can those of us that may not come naturally, how could we get better at hearing our intuition?
Oh, I love talking about that. So first of all, I want to say that we all have the ability to access our intuition. So it's not like, because sometimes people will say, well, I'm just not intuitive. It may not come as naturally to you, but if it's something that you want to cultivate and you're truly committed to cultivating, you can absolutely access your intuition. The important thing is the intuitive voice is a very quiet voice. And if you happen to be an individual who there's always a lot of mind chatter going on, which is true for most of us until we learn how to work with our mind chatter, you're not going to hear that intuitive voice. So more and more, I'm working with my clients around developing a practice for mindfulness and learning how to meditate, even if it's just like 5 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be going on some silent retreat for a week. You can learn how to sit and just get quiet. And that's the invitation to that intuitive voice. So an exercise that a listener might try is to, say, formulate a question. And we'll use my example from before, like what I might ask a question like, what's really in my best interest as far as this opportunity in October, something like that. And then I just sit and I get quiet. And what that means is just kind of focusing on your breathing. The thoughts are going to come and go. Just notice, oh, there's a thought, let it go, come back to the breath. And the more you do that, then you start to, I sometimes hear things, somebody gets a gut feeling, somebody might have like a visual image. So there's different ways that we access our intuition. But the key is about getting quiet and just paying attention to what are some of the either sensations that you're feeling or as I said, you might actually hear something that I know that might sound weird to people, but there's ways that our intuition speaks to us, and it's different for each person. I also think seeking out a group, like going to like a local meditation group in your area, or finding, people who are like-minded in that way that you could share some of your own intuitive, thoughts with, just to help validate. Because a lot of times when people are starting to tap into it, they think, is that really true? Or maybe I'm just making it up. And it's always helpful to have other people that you can, bounce some of that off with.
Yes.
How about for you? What have you found has been helpful for you?
I was just thinking about this when you were talking. I want to be more intentional around the asking of the question and getting quiet. I've gotten away from that a little bit. I have been really working on my own meditation practice. I use the Calm app. And one of my colleagues in another mastermind group that I'm in announced as like one of her wins that she's done an entire year, a 365-day streak of meditation every day. And when she shared that, what it was for me was thinking about, I wonder what kind of person I could be if I meditated every day. How would I be different? And what could that bring about in my life? And so I think I'm on a 26-day streak now. I have a way.
That's great. Yeah, but still.
And so I want to offer to our listeners that I have been working on my mind chatter well over 16 years. I used to have tremendous anxiety, nervousness. Coaching was the first thing that really helped me get a handle on the monkey mind or the gremlins. But then taking that to the next level, yoga, meditation, and it's not about trying to silence and forcing the silencing of the monkey mind and that internal chatter, because the harder we push against it, the louder it becomes and the more incessant. It's really about accepting it's there and notice it and just go on and refocus the attention. And what I was remembering as you were talking about, ask a question and get quiet, is when I was pregnant with my second daughter and I was doing yoga, and boy, the monkey mind and the chatter was going because my anxiety was sky high. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. My oldest is 7 and I've got this business. And so I got quiet and just asked myself, what do I want? And I mean, within a few minutes on my yoga mat, it came to me that I really want to give myself this long maternity leave and to just focus on enjoying my little baby. And that power of asking a question, and a powerful question, an open-ended question, not a yes-no kind of question, and really just tuning into what comes up. I think that's a wonderful thing that you've shared with us today and reminded us to do. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I also want to highlight something that you said about, you got clear, I want to take this maternity leave and have this time with my baby. And it's not unusual for the other voice to jump in and say, how are you going to make that happen? That's impossible. And to really, like at that moment, notice that is only a voice or a thought. It's not the truth. And because I think I use this term now, internal guidance system, which I haven't made up, but I like it. I really like it. And when your internal guidance system speaks to you, it's never in a harsh, negative voice. It's always like a gentle, caring voice. So when you hear the voice that says, oh, how are you ever going to make that happen? Just know that is not your internal guidance system. That's like some other voice that maybe is the voice of fear or just something else, but it's not your intuition speaking to you.
So let's talk a little bit about fear and those voices. What are some ways that you have found in your experience in life to work past, through, around fear and not let fear be the determinant?
Well, the first thing is simply acknowledging it, that it's there. And when you're up to something that may be a little bit risky or is out of your comfort zone, like you're really stretching yourself, fear it's just a normal feeling because you're doing something that is not in your comfort zone. And I think acknowledging it and even saying like, oh, it really does make sense that I would feel some fear here. And it's really okay. That in and of itself can be enough to just have the fear, dissipate. And I think if you notice that it's recurring and just acknowledging it isn't doing it, that's when I think it's helpful. There's different practices that I use. I mean, I have at this point, between meditation, journaling, yoga, going for walks in nature, like a lot of these self-care practices, I find just help me to feel that confidence in myself and feel that inner strength. And I also, have my people, I have whether it's reaching out to a coach or to a good friend, but, sometimes you do need that sounding board, but making sure that who you're going to is not going to feed the fear, and say, yeah, you really should be afraid because that's a big risk that you're taking. That's not necessarily the person who's going to, help you get through it. But I think someone who really is like standing for your success and wants you to be able to kind of move through this, that could be a great person to be like your ally in that moment.
Absolutely. This is some really good thinking here, and it's so good to have this conversation with you. One of the other things that I learned from you is the power of intention. And your business is living with intention originally, and then now you have leading with intention. And on the Profit by Design podcast, our big focus is talking about intentionally designing our businesses to support the lifestyle we desire, because work supports life, not the other way around. One of the things that's always impressed me about you, Lisa, is that you are so good about putting your self-care as a priority. I know over the years, there's been times when we've tried to schedule different things and you will say, oh no, I have something scheduled here and it's a self-care thing that you have scheduled. And you hold that as important. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you manage your self-care, how you hold it as important, and also how that ties into being intentional.
So one thing I do need to share with the listeners is that this is not like from day one, I was someone who practiced self-care or really even knew what that meant. I had my challenges. I was, raising a family, working full time, never feeling like I had a minute to myself. I developed thyroid disease. And it was my body's way of saying, like, you need to slow down. You are not taking care of yourself. So it was one of those blessings in disguise because fortunately it was treatable and I did get it treated and I no longer have it. But it was that wake up call for me, like, okay, so what am I going to do differently? Because I certainly don't want to walk around with thyroid disease. And I started to take some baby steps. And I think that's really helpful when you're getting started, because sometimes it could be overwhelming. Like, what do I have to change my whole life? No, but just baby steps, like carving out even, a half hour every couple days or something like that. I actually had a coaching client once who was a single mom with 3 teenage kids and, was solely responsible for her family, financially. And we came up with this idea of, I'll call her Susan. We called it Susan's Sacred 30, where she found 30 minutes, I think starting off maybe 3 times a week, that she could do anything she wanted. If she wanted to sit and read the paper, she could read the paper. If she wanted to lie on the sofa and watch a TV show, she could do that. It was like her sacred time to do anything she wanted. And it just began to like open up this space for her. So you can start small and then you start to see the impact and then you go from there. So at this point in my life, I have created, I would say most mornings of the week, like this coming Tuesday, I have a training. I have to be at the company at 8 a.m. So obviously it's not going to be this week on Tuesday, but most other days I get up pretty early and I have about 2 hours before I even get on my computer, where I have my coffee, I meditate, I write in my journal. It's just the way I start my day. And if it means that day I get up at 6, I get up at 6, or, it really varies, but I need that to start my day in a way that then supports me to really get done what I want to get done. So I think those baby steps really help.
Yes, the wake-up call. A lot of times I hear, people who are really good with their self-care and who hold it as a high priority, there has been a big wake-up call, usually a health scare in there that gets our attention. And, we can't continue this way. And I'm very big on my morning time, and I hold that as sacred for myself. Yesterday, I was not able to have my morning time. I had an early doctor's appointment. I rushed around, got out of the house, got to the doctor's appointment, never got seen because they were behind. And so 3 hours later, it still hadn't happened. But I really felt the effect of missing that time. I felt not off my game, but just not as sharp and crisp and fully alive, I think is how I would describe it, because I had not done the reading. I like to read, drink my coffee, meditate, journal. And those things, that's really where my energy comes from. And I think also is maybe some introvert in there as well. Let's talk though about intention and being intentional, one about self-care, but intentional in designing a lifestyle and a career that really supports us. Because you do that, you've been living that the 16 years I've known you. What might you share with our listeners around that?
So the first thing is really believing that it's okay, to be intentional and to want certain things and to believe that you deserve them and you can allow yourself to have them. Because I think sometimes people feel like I'm being selfish, I'm being self-centered, especially, this whole piece about trying to raise a family at the same time you're creating a business, at the same time you want some personal time. I'm at the other end now. I'm a grandmother, so I don't have those same responsibilities, but I do remember that time very vividly. And so I think the first thing is it's okay for me to want this. And then to think about what is most important for me right now? Is it, am I really feeling like I need to make a change in my work, or is it that I need to carve out time to myself, or is there something in my relationship that needs to be addressed? But really getting clear about what really isn't working right now, that if a shift was to happen, it would make a difference in my life. And sometimes, you need help with that. And that's why coaches are around, because we can really help with that, getting that clarity and providing that kind of support and structure. So I think recognizing there's something here that isn't quite right, isn't quite the way I want it to be. What is that? And what's really the path forward for me? Do I need to get some support? Is this something, I feel like I can do on my own? But putting the time and the energy into it and believing that, as I said before, you deserve it. It's okay to want certain things, and really allowing yourself to have them.
That it's okay, that we can give ourselves permission to have certain things. And that is so freeing once we come to terms with this is ours to create. What can I create here, and what will I give myself permission to do? And then to hold that as a priority. I think it's so easy to get swept up in the urgent and the day-to-day, and then we lose sight of our intention and what we're trying to work on, and that's where other people's needs and demands and requests can come in and really pull us off course very, very quickly. How do you, when you find yourself drifting off course, what are some of the things that you do to get back to what you're trying to be intentional around?
So one thing that was not easy for me for a very long time that, I would say can still feel challenging, but I'm much better at, is actually asking for help. I think as women in particular, right? And I'm not saying men don't experience this too, but because I work with so many women and know so many women, I think women have a hard time asking for help, like that there's something wrong. And what I have found is when I reach out and say, I could really use your help here, whether it's, having someone listen or actually there's some kind of task or something that I need help with, most people are so happy to help. Like they'll say, I'm so glad you called. I'm so glad you asked me. And so it helps kind of lighten my load a little bit. So I think asking for help, and then also noticing like, oh, have I gotten away from, like, I'm just one of these people who's super sensitive to what I put in my body. And if I start to eat certain things that I just shouldn't be eating, it throws everything. So it's like, oh, do I need to kind of do a reset here and get back to cleaner eating? Because that makes a big difference for me. So it's noticing like what's happening right now that's kind of contributed to my being thrown off course. Or maybe I've just gotten busier. It's a busier time for me at work because, there is an ebb and flow. And when it's super busy, then I really need to be on top of that self-care so that things don't begin to suffer.
So that right there is a really important point, because that's when our self-care tends to go out the window as we get busy. But that's exactly when we need to be more intentional around the self-care. And what you said about asking for help, I think, is a big reminder for a lot of us, and not just a woman problem. A lot of the clients that I coach are men, and that's a big issue too. And one of the areas where I see it, we have our clients in small groups. And so we have 4 business owners in each group meeting. And it can be very easy when one has a really, important situation that they're struggling with. The others will say, no, we're going to give you our time. We're going to let the whole focus be on you. And that's a piece of letting go of the opportunity to ask for help, and not taking the space to ask for help. There's things in our lives that go on all the time and in our businesses that we have the opportunity to ask others for help. Just like, when you go on your retreat with your friends, each person gets a focus. And sometimes going into that, I know for myself, when I've been in groups that you've coached and I was the client, sometimes you come into those meetings and it feels like, I don't know what I need today. I think everything's hunky-dory. I don't really need anything. But taking the space to just talk about what's going on often will surface things that we aren't even paying attention to that we could use help and input from others around us on.
Yes, I agree. And this comes up too with one-on-ones and organizations, because sometimes people will say, well, we set aside this time for one-on-ones, but then, there may not be anything to talk about. Well, I think there's always something to talk about, but maybe the person who is being given this time isn't as comfortable knowing what to ask for or what they might need. So I think, the person who's doing the coaching can say, come on, let's really look at this together. So encouraging that, asking for support or asking for help, it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's reminding me there's also a turning point that I've noticed when we're working with our business owners, because when they come in with us, they're really carrying a lot of weight and responsibility in the business, everything pretty much like the hub, even though they have team, they're still the hub. And so we work within getting systems in place and getting the right team members in place. And at some point, they're coming to the coaching calls saying, I don't have any problems. I have nothing to talk about. And it's very easy, I think, to get into the routine of seeing coaching as a place where you talk about your problems and your challenges. And I think a lot of the learning can happen when things are going right and smooth. Like, that's a huge opportunity. There's a lot to talk about in that. We need to capture what's working. And there's a lot of space that's being opened up for new opportunity.
And really taking that time to celebrate successes, that, okay, so maybe right now there isn't like a particular issue. Let's spend some time looking at what's working well and what's allowing, how come that's happening? Like, how come things are going so well? So that whatever those conditions are that are allowing things to go so well, they can be the person is clear about like, oh, so I put this in place and that's why this is working, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that celebration of wins and successes is something we don't do enough of. And it's a big part of helping us be more resilient and to bounce back, because I really believe what we focus on grows. And so if we're always focusing on the challenges and the problems, that's what's going to grow. And if we shift and we start focusing on, well, what do I appreciate? What am I grateful for? What's going well? Those things are what will grow in our life. Yeah. So Lisa, I really appreciate you being here with us today and the conversation that we've had.
Oh, it's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it.
Are there any final thoughts that you want to share?
Maybe just to highlight a couple of things that we discussed, which is, around being intentional and just really allowing yourself to have the things that you want, and to know that even if right at this moment it seems like it's far off or maybe not even that attainable, that it is, and knowing that, again, getting support if that's something that you need to make that happen. I think I'd like to just highlight that as we wrap up.
Thank you. Some wonderful words of wisdom.
Thanks, Sabrina. It's great to be with you.
Are you ready to be the leader you need to be to have the business that gives you your life back? If so, you may be a good fit for our small group coaching program at Tap the Potential. You can apply directly by going to profitgift.com. All one word, profitgift.com. What are you waiting for? Your life is waiting for you. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.